The train moves slowly across the huge land of Siberia. A young woman, Elena, looks out the window. For 3 days she has watched the endless forest of trees. Sometimes a small village appears. She sees a few wooden houses and smoke from chimneys. Then the village is gone, and there is only forest again. The forest seems to stretch across the whole world. Elena is 22 years old. She is traveling on the famous Trans-Siberian Railway. She is leaving her small town to find a new life and a job in Moscow. At night, the land outside is dark and empty. A few small lights show where some people live in the great, lonely space. This is the great puzzle of Russia. It is the largest country on Earth. It is bigger than the continent of South America and covers 11 time zones. But Russia has fewer people than the country of Nigeria or Bangladesh. This is a strange and important fact. Let's think about the numbers. Russia has about 144 million people. Because the country is so big, the population density is very low. There are only 9 people for each square kilometer. Compare this to Bangladesh. It has a density of almost 1,300 people per square kilometer. Even a large country like Nigeria has about 260 people per square kilometer. Why is this vast country so empty? To find the answer, we must look at Russia's difficult geography and its long, hard history. This is the story of a huge land with very few people, and the reasons for this great paradox. 2. A very big and cold land. Russia is a very big country, but its land is difficult to live on. A huge forest called the taiga covers a lot of the country. This forest is bigger than the United States. It is not an easy place for people to make a home. The winters are long and extremely cold. In some parts of Siberia, the temperature can fall to -60 degrees Celsius. Life is very hard in this kind of weather. A very big problem in Russia is the permafrost. Permafrost is ground that is always frozen all year. About 65% of Russia is covered by this frozen ground. It is very difficult to build on permafrost. When you build a house, the heat from the house can melt the ice in the ground. Then the ground becomes soft and wet, and the building can sink and break. Because of this, cities in these areas, like Yakutsk, must build their houses on tall posts called stilts. This keeps the building safe, but it is very expensive and difficult to build roads and railways too. Farming is also not easy. The soil is often not good for growing food. In many places, the time for growing plants is very short, maybe only 3 months in the summer. This is not enough time to grow a lot of food for many people. The size of Russia also creates huge economic problems. The country is so large that it is very expensive to move supplies from one place to another. The great distances make everything difficult. Imagine a small town in Siberia. The nearest big city with food and medicine might be hundreds of kilometers away. Getting these supplies to the town costs a lot of money. A simple bottle of milk can be as expensive as a nice bottle of wine in Paris. The country's big rivers, like the Ob and the Lena, do not help much with trade. They flow north into the cold Arctic Ocean, not to busy ports or other countries. This geography of cold, distance, and difficult land helps to explain why so much of Russia is empty. 3. A difficult past. Russia's cold land and great size are not the only reasons for its small population. The country's difficult history is also a very important part of the story. For hundreds of years, Russia suffered from terrible events. These problems stopped the population from growing and left wounds that never had time to get better. The trouble started a long time ago. In the 13th century, the Mongols invaded from the east. Their powerful armies destroyed many Russian cities, including the great city of Kiev. After the invasion, very few people were left alive in some areas. For more than 200 years, the Mongols controlled the land. They took money and people away, which kept Russia poor and weak. Later, in the 16th century, the Russian leader Ivan the Terrible used violence against his own people. His soldiers destroyed Novgorod, a rich and important city. Then, in the 17th century, a period called the Time of Troubles brought more war and famine, a time when there is no food. These early disasters killed millions. The 20th century was the worst time for Russia's population. First, Russia fought in World War I, and many young men died. Soon after, the Russian Civil War started. This was a terrible fight between Russians, and it killed millions more from fighting, disease, and hunger. But the biggest disaster was World War II. The Soviet Union, which Russia was the main part of, lost about 27 million people. This number is difficult to imagine. It was one of the worst losses any country has ever had in a war. So many young men died that it created a big problem for families for many years after. Each of these events was a catastrophe. A war or a famine would kill millions of people. The population would start to slowly grow again, but then another disaster would happen. This cycle of destruction meant Russia never had a long period of peace to grow. This difficult past left deep scars that still affect the number of people living in Russia today. 4. The Soviet Plan. The new Soviet Union had a very big and ambitious plan. Its leaders believed they could use state power to change Russia's geography and population. They thought they could solve the problem of the empty lands with socialist planning. Their goal was to build a strong country by moving people and industries into the vast, empty territory. They started to build new hero cities in very remote places, especially in Siberia and the Arctic. These cities were not built for comfort. They were built near important resources like iron, coal, and nickel. For example, Magnitogorsk was built in the Ural Mountains for its iron, and Norilsk was built in the freezing Arctic to mine valuable metals. Life in these new industrial centers was extremely hard. The winters were long and incredibly cold, and it was very expensive to bring food and supplies. Building these cities was a brutal task. The government used forced labor from its prison camp system, the Gulag. Millions of prisoners were sent to the coldest parts of the country to build roads, railways, and new factories. The conditions were terrible, and the work was dangerous. A huge number of people died from hunger, disease, and the extreme cold. The Soviet government accepted these deaths to achieve its industrial goals. For a while, the Soviet population did grow, but the system had deep problems. The new cities were not sustainable. They always needed money and support from the central government to survive. Also, Soviet policies made family life difficult. Women had to work full-time jobs and also manage the home, which made it hard to have many children. The government also forced farmers to give up their land and join large state farms. This policy, called collectivization, led to terrible famines that killed millions and destroyed rural communities. In the end, the Great Soviet Plan failed to create lasting communities. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the support for these remote cities stopped. People lost their jobs and started to leave. Many industrial towns lost half their population, and smaller settlements became ghost towns. The plan did not solve Russia's paradox. It just created a different kind of empty space, abandoned cities and broken communities. 5. A country in crisis. In 1991, the Soviet Union ended. This event started a time of great crisis in Russia. For decades, the government had controlled people's jobs and lives. Suddenly, this system was gone. This new freedom was also very difficult and created a big problem for the country's population. The economy was in chaos. Many large state factories closed down. Millions of people lost their jobs and had no money. At the same time, prices for food, clothes, and housing went up very quickly. People's life savings became almost worthless. For ordinary Russian families, life became a daily struggle for survival. Many felt lost and very worried about the future. This heavy stress had a terrible effect on people's health. The death rate increased very fast, especially among men. In the mid-1990s, the average man in Russia lived only to about 58 years old. This was lower than in many much poorer countries. A major reason was alcohol. With so much uncertainty, many men started to drink dangerous amounts of cheap alcohol. This led to many deaths from illness, accidents, and violence. The old Soviet healthcare system also collapsed, so people could not get the medical help they needed. While more people were dying, fewer babies were being born. The birth rate fell to a historic low. Young couples looked at the difficult situation and felt they could not give a child a good life. It was impossible to plan for the future. Many women chose to focus on finding work or decided not to have children during such a hard time. This situation created a demographic cross. On a chart, the line showing deaths went up, while the line showing births went down. The two lines crossed. For the first time in decades without a major war, Russia's population began to shrink. The crisis of the 1990s left a deep scar on the country and made its problem of empty lands even bigger. 6. Moscow and the empty lands. In Russia today, there is a huge difference between the capital, Moscow, and the rest of the country. Moscow is a rich, modern city with over 12 million people. It is full of opportunities, with good jobs, famous universities, and an exciting life. It can feel like a different country compared to other regions. In many smaller cities and villages, life is much harder. There are not enough jobs, and public services like schools and hospitals are often not very good. This growing gap separates the wealthy capital from the poorer parts of Russia. Because of this gap, many young and educated people decide to leave their homes. They see no future in their small towns. They pack their bags and move to big cities, especially Moscow, hoping to find better work and a better life. Many of Russia's best students, scientists, and doctors choose to move away. Some even leave Russia completely and emigrate to Europe or America. This is a brain drain. When the most talented people leave, it becomes much harder for their old communities to survive and grow. As people move away, large parts of Russia are becoming empty. This is a very serious problem in the vast lands of Siberia and the Far East. These regions are bigger than many countries, but their populations are getting smaller every year. Entire towns that were once busy centers for mining or industry are now losing people fast. For example, the Magadan region in the Far East has lost nearly half its population since the year 1990. In these places, you can see empty apartment buildings and closed factories, a silent story of decline. These emptying regions are now called demographic deserts. In these areas, the population is mostly older people because the young families have left. Very few babies are born, so the towns get older and smaller. The number of people goes down every year because deaths are much higher than births. This creates a difficult cycle. When a town loses people, businesses close and there are fewer services. This makes even more young people want to leave. As a result, Russia is becoming a nation of a few crowded cities surrounded by enormous, lonely lands. 7. Russia's future problem. Russia's population problem is not over. It continues today and creates serious challenges for the future. A main reason for this is the low number of births in the 1990s. People born then are now adults who can have their own families. But because this generation is much smaller than previous ones, they will have fewer babies in total. This is a problem from the past that affects the future. It almost guarantees that Russia's population will keep getting smaller. Recent events have made this situation even more difficult. The war in Ukraine, for example, has had a big impact. Many people have died. Also, hundreds of thousands of young and educated Russians have decided to leave the country. This is called emigration. When these smart and skilled people leave, it hurts the country's future economy. Russia is losing the people it needs to create new businesses and technology. This is a very serious problem. At the same time, Russia's society is getting older. The large group of people born in the 1950s and 1960s are now retiring from their jobs. This creates a big challenge. There are fewer young people working to pay for the pensions and health care of the large number of older people. This puts a lot of pressure on the government and the economy. It is difficult to support an aging society when the number of young workers is shrinking. Finally, climate change adds another layer of trouble. In the cold parts of Russia, like Siberia, much of the ground is permanently frozen. This is called permafrost. Now, with warmer temperatures, this permafrost is starting to melt. This is very dangerous because it can destroy the foundations of buildings, roads, and pipelines in northern cities. There are also more big forest fires every year. These fires burn huge areas of land and can destroy towns, making it impossible for people to live there. These combined problems make Russia's future very uncertain. 8. The big question. We have learned about Russia's strange problem. It is the largest country on Earth, but it does not have a large population. We have asked, why is this big country so empty? The answer has many parts. First, there is the land itself. A huge part of Russia is very cold for most of the year. The long, hard winters and the frozen ground make life very difficult. It is not easy to build homes or grow food. Because the country is so big, it is also very expensive to travel or move supplies between towns. History is another important reason. Over many centuries, Russia had terrible wars, invasions, and famines. These events killed millions of people. They stopped the population from growing for a long time. In the last century, after the Soviet Union ended, Russia had new problems. Life was very hard for many people, and the number of babies being born became very low. Today, this problem continues. Many young and educated Russians are moving away from their small towns and villages. They go to big, rich cities like Moscow to find good jobs and a better life. This movement of people leaves many parts of Russia with very few people. Some regions in Siberia and the Far East are becoming like empty deserts. This brings us to the big question for the future. What will young Russians decide to do? Will they stay and try to build a new life in the smaller towns and empty lands? Or will they continue to move to the big cities, or even leave Russia to live in other countries? The answer is not simple, and it is very important. The future of this vast country depends on the choices of its people. The story of Russia's big, empty land is not finished yet. It is being written right now by the young generation. Their personal decisions will shape the country for many years. If you were a young person in Russia facing this choice, what would you do? Would you stay or would you leave?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.